What's good, K9 Nation? It's your boy Chaos here, coach of your Detroit Red Wingulls, your 2-0 Detroit Red Wingulls. And we are back with week 3, our team builder versus the Yampers this week in Teddy. This is another rough matchup in our draft lineup this season for our schedule. We face off against Teddy and the Yampers this week. Again, this is not a team that I've gotten a chance to test out, but as we saw last week, that worked. So hopefully this one works as well into this matchup as too. This week, I've sunk the most amount of time into prep out of the weeks so far, so kudos to Teddy for drafting a great team. And let's get into what the Yampers have this year. So we are looking at Sneasler, Excadrill, Hydrapple, Florges, Galarian Articuno with Terra Fighting and Steel, Tyranitar, Magmortar with Terra Fire, Electric and Fairy, Houndstone, Lapras, and Fur with Terra Normal, Ghost, Fighting, and Fairy. You can see how the speed tiers line up there on the screen. Again, we have pretty good speed tiers into this team, barring that Sneasler, which is a little bit of a problem, and also can run Unburden to really kind of deal with Darkrai too. So it's not the greatest matchup for this week, but as I said, we'll figure out what we're going to be doing. As for my opponent, what they're going to be bringing this week, Sneasler's 100% coming this week. I would be very surprised not to see it. It's way too good to leave out unless they want to throw. If that's the case, we really got to start thinking on our feet about what's the likely win con for his team. This most likely wants to run Focus Sash. It's a good way to tank a hit and get Sneasler into the right position. It's also a phenomenal lead option to my team. There's not really anything that threatens to KO it immediately, especially with that. So it can be a problem for the team. It is great as a lead option as well because it gets U-turn. It's a pivoting option, and we probably wants to run that. We may see Unburden this week to outspeed Darkrai. That's likely its bring, but it also could be a great option to run Poison Touch to try to get some status around. It doesn't have to be the sweeper of the team. Maybe something else in the back wants to do that, and I'll talk about some of those options as well. But if it wants to be annoying, Poison Touch Dire Claw are really good strategies. Dire Claw, Close Combat, or Must Brings for the set. I really don't see it coming without it. And I really think Throat Chop is a good final option for this Pokemon. It could want to run Fake Out just to kind of get rid of a Sash on something, but I do feel like it wants a Dark type move to kind of counter some of the options that I could be bringing for it. It doesn't have enough move slots to exploit a lot of things that it wants to do. It has some options, but typically I think that's the 4 moves we're going to see, and I definitely think it's going to be coming. They could be worried about Mesprit and Zoroark, which is why I think they're going to be bringing Throat Chop to try to deal with it, because Mesprit actually is a really good matchup against Sneasler, and yeah, Dark Cover just makes sense for this Pokemon. Excadrill is another thing I think that comes this week. This team isn't really too big of a fan of hazards, so I can see Rapid Spin coming from Excadrill. It doesn't really have the greatest matchup this week because of its speed tier, but it can be changed under Sand because it is allowed to use Sand Rush, which means it will most likely be a wall breaker for my team if it's going to do that. Plus, Rapid Spin also helps with that speed tier by allowing it to be set up and get its speed. It doesn't have enough move slots for everything it wants to have this week. There are definitely some things like it wants to run Brick Break, it wants to run Rocks, it wants to run its Rapid Spin and Stabs. That's 5 moves right there, so it can't run everything, so we have to figure out what it wants to do so we can deal with it. It likely wants to run Brick Break for fighting coverage on Darkrai, and that is probably what it's here for. So I would expect to see that over something like the Rock move. So we'll see what happens with Excadrill, if it even comes. I definitely could see them not bringing it this week. If Excadrill's coming, you know, Tyranitar has to be coming. T-Tar comes to support Excadrill this week. It's a great option, regardless of Excadrill or not, but I think with Sand, you're going to want to bring the T-Tar as well, especially you have 2 options for Sand this week. Chople Berry is the most useful item. There is a lot of fighting coverage on my team, as well as a pretty good fighting type in Hawlucha, so it probably wants to run some sort of Chople set to deal with that. I'm kind of predicting it to be more bulky and kind of be utility Pokemon with knockoff and a setup and kind of sponge some hits. I don't really have a great option for defensive Tyranitar, so that is probably the set. Probably max HP, max defense, one of those two, some attack investment. Could run Assault Vest if it wants to run both defenses. I could see it anyway like that, but defensive T-Tar does make a lot of sense for this team. Dragon Dance is a possibility, but we have to keep that in mind too. But I really think this is going to be a knockoff Stealth Rock set. If it's Chople, it will probably have Brick Break to punish Darkrai. Otherwise, it may want to run EQ to deal with some of the other things like Iron Treads. It could be Assault Vest to try to deal with my specials, but I think there's other team members for that role, so I definitely expect to see more of a physical defensive Tyranitar this week if it's coming. Articuno, wow. I can't speak. That's great. Articuno Galar most likely comes this week as a Terra captain. It is a setup sweeper, is a great setup sweeper, especially with Contrary. Terra fighting is a great Terra against Darkrai. It's a great way to deal with Darkrai, especially because it's already naturally bulky enough to really take it on. It wants recovery and things like leftovers or synthesis to be annoying for the rest of my team. It could also be a heavy duty boots. It probably is a heavy duty boot, so it doesn't mind switching out, anticipating some of my hazards. I see a potential for a 3 attacks called Mindset, which may opt to also for recover for longevity. It has some options this week. I definitely have seen him run recover, and I think that's a likely bring. So it might just be dual stab fighting for a defensive typing more than an offensive typing. I really think that he wants to bring Terra Blast if he's going to Terra Articuno. So that's what we got to be prepared for. Florigus, I also think, comes this week. It's a great special defensive wall to deal with Darkrai. It's probably the best thing to deal with Darkrai, honestly, this week. And I would be really surprised if it doesn't show up. It wants recovery, so it wants to do things like synthesis or leftovers for its item and a move to annoy the team. It also could be a calm mindset to kind of be a bulky breaker if it wants to do that. It could do screens, or it could opt for its psychic or grass coverage to complete the set. So it's got some options. I really think Moonblast is pretty good into my team just in general, so I don't really see the need for other moves, so we could see some interesting stuff on Florigus, that's for sure. And the last thing I think he's going to be bringing this week is Houndstone. This anticipates, I'm really anticipating Sand this week, the desire to sweep with Sand. I think this is a great option for that, especially late game with Last Respects. Houndstone is a really good option at the end, even without Sand, because of Last Respects. And at that point, I have seen Last Respects Choice Scarf as a set that has been brought for this team. For some reason, it is allowed to have Last Respects, while everything else is not. That's probably why it's such an expensive Pokemon. But if it's Scarfed, I would expect to see Trick, because I have 2 normal types on my team, so it wants to deal with that. It could also just be a fluffy set that wants to deal with some options that might be faster than it. 68's not a great speed stat, and even boosted, that's not super great. And we still can outspeed it with some other things. So I definitely expect to see that. I could see it be defensive to try to deal with my physical attackers like Halucha or Iron Treads, which is probably a good role for it in general. Some swaps, I definitely could see Magmortar coming, rather. It is a good Terra option, solid all-out attacker, great for the team, doesn't like rocks, so that might be a little bit of a thing. But if Excadrill's not coming, I definitely could see Magmortar swapping in. Assault Vest also is a great ideal for this, because it does take on Darkrai a little bit and some of my powerful attackers that way. It's likely a Terra Fairy, because it wants to deal with Darkrai. We also could see Hydrapple. In fact, we probably will see Hydrapple. It's a good special defensive wall this week. I think that's a great option for his team, especially to deal with Darkrai. He might not want to bring it because I have access to Ice Beam on Darkrai, so there is definitely better options for it. Regenerate is great. Fickle Beam is a really broken move, and especially if it hits the 30% to do triple damage, it's crazy. Could be a really big problem if it procs. And Furret, it could be a great way to come in if he wants to deal with hazards. Otherwise, an Excadrill set of Excadrills can come. Furret probably wants to come. That's not a bad set either. But I do think you might want to bring Magmortar also instead of that. So it could be a great... honestly, most of the team could come. The only thing I don't really expect is Lapras, but Lapras still has its uses. All right, for my team, we're bringing Luck the Halucha. That is my first bring this week. It is Choice Scarf with Mold Breaker as its ability. It is a weird EV spread, 72 in HP, 252 in attack, 60 in special defense, and 124 in speed. That gives us some speed creep for some of the Pokemon that we were trying to deal with. Most importantly, dealing with anything that is slower than Sneasler. So that is what we are trying to calc for here this week. And that's without the Choice Scarf. So with the well, not without the Choice Scarf, but the Choice Scarf gives us enough speed to kind of outspeed like another Choice Scarf user, like the Houndstone that we were talking about, or even Sneasler. I think it wouldn't beat Sneasler with Unburden, but it could beat Sneasler in most things otherwise. It does definitely is built to outspeed Sneasler at max speed, which is the big point of this. I feel like this is a must bring against this team. It can really punish my opponent for running Sand by dealing with both with its Sand users in T-Tar and Excadrill. Not so great in a Houndstone, but it could definitely do that. It will not outspeed Excadrill in the Sand, which is why I think it could come. This is my fastest thing on the team, so I definitely think Excadrill and Sand is a good option for my team. This might be my lead option. So far it's been my designated lead. If I see Sneasler, if I think Sneasler is going to be the lead for my opponent, I definitely want to use Hawlucha to counter it because we have dual Wing Beat, which does break the Focus Sash immediately, and we outspeed with Choice Scarf. So that is why Hawlucha is built this way. We didn't really need Unburden besides the Sand, and even with the Sand, we have ways to stall that out. So that's going to be really the play with that. Hawlucha is a great revenge killer as well, with that Choice Scarf being the fastest thing. Mold Breaker's phenomenal ability that breaks any of the things that it might want to try to do to me, like Flame Body, because we definitely can see Flame Body and Magmortar switching into this thing trying to get a burn, and that would not be great. It's great for rid of the Sand Core. I think that's why I really want it, but it really deals with Sneasler, and that's why I want it so bad. It's a great way to stop that, and Sneasler's probably one of their biggest win cons this week if it wants to be run that way, and I'm scared of it, so I really don't like Sneasler, fighting Sneasler at all. So bring it Sneasler against me. There you go. I'll let everybody in on a secret. Next up is Asta the Darkrai with Life Orb, Bad Dreams. This is ability because I have to run that. It is max speed, max special attack, with a little bit of special defensive adjustment. We are running Timid Nature. That is to guarantee the outspeed on Sneasler. So that is what we're doing with that. Dark Pulse, Psy Shock, Focus Blast, and Sludge Bomb, 4 attacks. Standard Darkrai this week. If there was a week to not bring Darkrai, I would say this is probably that week. It still puts in good work, and so I have to bring it. I think it's one of the better options for my team, and it wasn't my initial thought, but I do think Darkrai has a good bring this week and can do some really cool things to pick up some kills, maybe late in the game, which is probably where I'm going to need it the most. Life Orb is good damage on most things. It's a 2-KO on pretty much anything that wants to come out. I do have the threat of Ice Beam, even though I'm not running it, so that would maybe threaten Hydrapple, but we have some answers as well for the other things too. We need some KOs, so that's why we're running Life Orb. Natural, non-invested, not modest, timid Darkrai without Life Orb does not kill things, but Life Orb definitely gives us the needed hits. Darkrai's not going to be taking hits because it's faster than everything, so we might as well just throw a Life Orb on it and call it a day. I really want to run Ice Beam, but I absolutely need Psyshock this week in case something goes very, very wrong and we need to deal with Sneasler by outspeeding it without Unburden or something. Darkrai's going to be able to do that with Psyshock, and that's a one-shot. I absolutely need that to deal with Sneasler. Other coverage moves deals with things like Darkrai Darkrai deals with Excadrill and Tyranitar with Focus Blast. It's got okay matchups into Hydrapple, Magmortar, Lapras, and Furret. That's not really why it's here. It's meant to deal with the big threats and sweep the sweepers at the end of the game. So it's a great option late game, and I think that's probably where we're going to try to save Darkrai the most for here at the end of the game. Next up is Mimosa or Arboliva with an Assault Vest this week. I have Seed Sower as my ability. I have the Fire Terra type. I am max HP, 140 special attack, and 116 special defense with a modest nature. Giga Drain, Earth Power, Alluring Voice, and Terra Blast are my moves this week. It became incredibly obvious that I needed something to deal with their special offensive Pokemon as well. So I didn't really consider this Pokemon to be brought, but Mimosa does actually a pretty good job into this team. It's basically the same set as last week, although I chose Terra Fire to help remove damage from Hydrapple, Florges, and Magmortar. That gives me a little bit more staying power with Arboliva, and I think that's really useful. Fire allows me to sit on Florges and Magmortar while still being really useful against Hydrapple, Articuno, Houndstone, Lapras, Furret. Terra is going to be, this should be my Terra choice this week, and I thought about that really hard when I was bringing it. It may just be my best Terra for Teddy, but depending on what I need, I might have one of my other Terra users, which are in the back, to come out and be a Terra user this week. So we'll see what happens with the matchup. Next up is Klaus the Iron Shreds with Booster Energy this week. Quirk Drive is its ability, of course. It is 252 in attack, 252 in speed with an adamant nature. That gives me Earthquake, Iron Head, and Rapid Spin and Ice Spinner to use as my moves of choice. When I said Hawlucha had a good matchup this week, I thought it was the best bring for the team. Boy, was I wrong. Klaus takes names this week. This is a great Pokemon. And while I've been building max attack every week on my set so far, we've been using defensive items to help the longevity of Iron Tread. This week, we are throwing caution to the wind. I need hyper offense, and that's why we're running Boost Energy this week. As I was looking at sets, I realized due to the speed tiers of my opponents, I can get away with an offensive cleaner this week. especially when I have boosted energy, which boosts my attack stat since I am adamant. That is why we're adamant also, by the way. The speed problem can be fixed with rapid spin, as we said with Excadrill. It is a great way to kind of get my speed up, and it's also good for hazards. It's a nice middle ground play if they want to switch out, because they'd have to be a Choice Scarf user to even have a chance to outspeed me at that point. Naturally, I outspeed max speed Furret and below, which is a good portion of the team, so we're pretty good. So only max speed, timid Articuno, and fast Sneasler can outpace this set if they want to try that. If I anticipate that those Pokemon are a problem, I also can just click Rapid Spin, and then I outspeed anything that's not running through the sand or that has a Choice Scarf this week. I also take on most of the team with this Pokemon, and I'm really looking to remove Lapras before I send Klaus out. That's why I said Lapras is that's the only thing Lapras is really good for this week, is to deal with this. And I need to be wary of the No Terra Articuno just in case. Certain Houndstone sets also can be a problem, and T-Tar also is a little bit of a problem as well. Everything else should be pretty much easy pickings for Iron Treads, which is my biggest win con of the week. Next up is Henry the Knuckle Stack with Eviolite. Well, Purifying Salt is my ability. I have Terra Fighting this week, 252 in HP, 252 in defense, and a little bit of attack investment. We are running Iron Press again with Salt Cure and Recover as utility options. Now, you've seen this set before. Do I even really need to break it down? We're running Iron Press yet again. It's just a good set. Although this time it's not because it's good for my opponent. It's really not. That's not the best thing for it, but it's just a really good option this week to be defensive. This is very much a necessity this week. I hesitated to bring really either of my not fully evolved Pokemon since they don't really like knockoff. That seems to be pretty prevalent on my opponent's side of the field, but I really need Iron Press. Eviolite or not, I really need this boost in defense to help deal with his offensive attackers. I don't really have a great counter to Tyranitar, and I can't let it sit around, so I'm implementing Knuckle Stack this week to check Tyranitar. It's a weird check. That's why Earthquake is kind of cool. Realistically, I know it probably won't stay in versus Henry, but a man can hope that that is the set that we're going to have to deal with. But this is really just meant to be a defensive counter this week. I'm not expecting it to do anything crazy like get many kills, nor do I think Henry has the potential to sweep this week, but I think it could be really good for the team defensively. Fighting is a great Terra for Knuckle Stack this week. It's great to help out with Sneasler, Excadrill, Tyranitar, Houndstone, and Lapras. And there's a decent matchup to Articuno and Magmortar, but it's mostly just setup fodder for Articuno, which is why we have something else to deal with that in the back, which is my next and final Pokemon, Crocodile Magna, with Eviolite and Unaware this week. I am running Terra Fairy. I have 252 HP, a little bit of special attack investment, and the rest go into special defense. It is a relaxed nature as well. This is a similar set. Flamethrower, Slack Off, Terra Blast, and Roar is my set this week. It's the same thing as I said with Knuckle Stack. Do I really need to unpack this? You guys know what I'm doing this week with Crocodile. It's mostly for security this week. There really wasn't anything I wanted in this final slot, and Crocodile is just help. I don't want to get swept by Calm Mind Articuno, which is definitely a thing. It's a great natural special wall. Fire is great as a defensive typing into this team, and it plays well against their special tanks, especially when I was worried about Terra Arboliva. All those things still apply here to Crocodile, which might make it even a better Terra Captain this week. I don't know. I have Terra Fairy, but realistically, I don't really need it. It's there just in case I want to do more damage, or in case both my other Terra Captains are dead for some reason. I just need to make it happen. It's there. Sure, it does extra fire damage. It does extra damage, and fire just does well on the special side this week, so I don't really need too much to be invested into it. But yeah, it does its job, so I don't really know about that. I brought Will-O-Wisp this week, so I have the wrong set. We're not running Roar, we're running Will-O-Wisp. I didn't change that, my bad. But Will-O-Wisp is here as to punish those physical attackers that want to switch in on this thing. Also chips down walls faster. Burn allows Crocodile to take on the physical threats as well as the special defensive threats this week, and special attack threats, which is why we put our investment in special defense instead of defense this week. I think I'm honestly just looking at the set from last week, so my apologies for that being wrong on the screen, but I did think about Roar, but we don't need that because we're not bringing rocks, and that is part of it. So realistically, we are running, everything I said was correct, besides the only thing that's wrong is Roar is Terra Blast. Roar is not there for Will-O-Wisp. That's the only thing that's wrong. Sorry about that. But as I said, this week is the one I spent the most time prepping for this season. It's also the latest game we've played in the season. In fact, as soon as I'm done recording this, I gotta go straight into the battle, so that's fun, which makes me a little on edge. At some point in the team building process, each member of my roster has made it onto the team to try to fill some necessary roles, but I feel like the team that we have here, the 6 that we're bringing, are the best 6, and I think the prep with them is going to help us win this week. So we'll do our best and check out the battle later in this week. Well, check out the battle tomorrow, I guess I should say, to see what happens with the battle. But that is it for me today. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. Make sure to like button, subscribe to the channel for more, and we'll see you tomorrow for our week 3 battle versus the Yampers. Stay safe out there, and as always, burn it up.